Thank you very much, Joe. Thanks, everybody. I think that previous session was a really nice lead-in, actually, to this session, because what we had Dame Alison, Susan, and Tony talk a lot about diversity of thought, and ultimately, diversity has become quite a big kind of buzzword. But what I'm going to do is take you through, well, maybe why it has become a buzzword and what are the important things to actually note in terms of what's important. So you probably didn't expect to see a photograph of Ronald Reagan when you were talking about diversity. But actually, if you look back to the history of diversity, what happened in the USA, and many times, the USA does lead the way in some of the conversations in the debate, Ronald Reagan was going to dismantle the equality affirmative action laws, which were primarily put in place to help black people in America have better representation than they did and get the opportunities that white Americans could get. What happened was that actually generated a debate, and there was a lot of conversations around actually what was the place of affirmative action laws, and maybe it was a chance to actually break from those. And then a lot of research was done around diversity, and a kind of groundswell appeared that said, look, governments and government in the USA actually don't promote diversity because of a legal requirement, actually promote it because it's good for business. So we hear a lot talked about diversity, and obviously I'm female, as you've noticed. So, a lot of it is about, gender diversity, but there's multiple types of diversity. So there's some of them, language. We've heard about thinking styles, experiences, culture, skills, age, sexual orientation. Now, in terms of the actual case for diversity, and I am going to spend a little bit of time focusing on age, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that my customer base my average age of my customers is 83. And I do find that dealing in a world of older people, I do get to see firsthand how older people are kind of devalued by society. And I think given that we are going to be looking in 2020 at 1 in 4 New Zealanders being over 55, I think it is an area where New Zealand does need to embrace the opportunity that the fact that we're all living longer and happier and healthier is actually going to provide the country. So globally, when people have been asked about diversity in the statistics, basically we've got age is the third most frequently cited diversity issue. Basically gender is the first, ethnicity is the second. 74% of big organizations have seen diversity and inclusion as central to their people strategy. However, nobody's measuring it. So you can say that it's important, but actually people can't tell you what is the makeup of their workforce, how's that workforce being brought through, what sort of targets, visions, and aspirations do they have. And I am a big fan of the Deming quote, what you can't measure, you can't manage. I'd probably phrase it as actually, if you don't measure it, you don't care about it, therefore you don't manage it. So I think one of the things that we can all do at organizations is actually look to see, well, what is our workforce base? Do we actually really understand that? And I think as leaders, we've got a responsibility to do that. There is a lot of research that indicates that diversity is a good idea, that it does actually add to your return on equity. It does add to your EBIT margins. I think, however, it is what the panel said before. It's about getting the right mix, because I know I've been in diverse situations where you don't actually have a team that bonds and then performs highly. So you do need to actually work at getting that team to bond and really lead. I just did want to show you a little video clip about older people. It's been launched by the Australian Human Rights Commission. So if the technical guys in the corner can sort that out for me, that would be great.
I know what you're thinking. I'm old, very old. And you might be wondering, how did I get so lucky? Because, as you and I know, old people can do amazing things. We're experienced, and we know how things work. We help in our communities in ways big and small. We're active in life and online. We add billions to the economy.
So to number 55.
And when it comes to the tough choices, we've got the wisdom to get it right. Oldness, it's everywhere. And if you're lucky, it can happen to you.
Sorry, sir. We're looking for someone younger.
In that video, I think there is an awful lot of myths about the older worker. Now, it's interesting, one of the myths is that older workers have more accidents, and actually the research shows that's not true. It says one other myth is that older workers are less productive. Again, the research says that's not true. The other interesting thing is that the older worker, another myth, takes more sick days. Well, actually, that's categorically not true. The attendance records actually say they're better for the older workforce until they get to 80. So maybe we just need to expand our thinking on what is, what a member of our current workforce looks like. I actually do have an 80-year-old that works for me in Queenstown, met her the other day, works as a caregiver in our rest home there, used to be the matron of the hospital. So what she brings to the role is, heaps and heaps of experience. She is starting to not be able to work like long shifts, so she does 4 hours a day. But again, great attendance record, adds a lot of value and can relate very well to my customer, who's only 3 years older than her. The other thing that I have is I've got a 72-year-old that works in Whakatane, and she leads the Zumba class, so and keeps basically the other members of the team on their toes. So it's just something I'm very passionate about. I feel that, my customer base is older. To value those older customers, we actually need to be valuing older people in society, and that means maintaining their relevance and their, experience in the workplace. And actually, it's a business imperative. We're going to have to do it because we actually don't have enough people to do the work. The participation rates in New Zealand are pretty much the highest in the world at 69%. That's an exceptional participation rate from the population. I'll skip over that one. Just a little bit about Bupa, because I kind of thought I'd tell you about some of my personal journey around diversity and inclusion and how you make that work in the workforce. There's just some numbers for you. We've got 60 care homes, 4,200 residents, 4,000 employees, 29 retirement villages, 7 rehabilitation sites, 11,000 customers, and an asset base of $1 billion. So a fairly big organization. Our workforce is 88% female. We do pretty well, actually, in our executive team. Our executive team is 70% female. It actually was over 80% female till I appointed Director of Property and Development. I searched high and low. I had 60 applicants, 2 of which were women, 58 were men. So I appointed a man called Richard. Our CFO at least has the decency to give himself a name that could be male or female, so he's called Robin. But he's delighted that another man has joined the team. We do tend to attract older workers, so 10% of our workforce is over 65, and 18% of our workers over 55, and just over 6% over 65. The stats do say that all of us as employers need to plan ahead. The workforce is getting older. The thing that really surprised me when we looked into our workforce, we've got 59 nationalities, which is fairly diverse. So really do take the time as leaders of your business to actually gather some sort of information on your workforce, because it will probably surprise you. So yeah, it's aging. We have some overseas workers. We don't tend to have highly qualified in terms of formal qualifications. We have some literacy and numeracy issues. At the minute, there's a big pay case that's going on in the sector. got 35% union density, 24/7 business, and as I say, 81 different physical locations, and a huge diversity of roles and experiences. We've got care home managers, we've got registered nurses, we've got occupational therapists, we've got cleaners, we've got kitchen hands, we've got laundry workers. So, it is very, very varied. So, what I find whenever we approached inclusion and kind of diversity at Bupa was, I suppose this is the big learning for me as a CEO, is actually you need to have a lot of initiatives. One initiative is just not going to do it all, because actually if you've got 59 nationalities, if you've got a broad range of different skills and experience in your workforce, you need to actually connect with each of those people in a different way. And I suppose that's been my personal battle. I kind of wanted a couple of programs that in some ways probably ticked the box and sorted this out for me. And then I realized actually that wasn't going to happen, because what made some member of my staff feel valued and made them feel connected wasn't the same as what made another member of staff feel valued and connected. So look, what I'm going to do is just roll through a whole list of initiatives, and it's just to give you a feel for the breadth that you do need to actually embrace. So there's the performance development review, we've got leadership programs, and our leadership programs I'm really proud of, because they're actually multi-level. And we have seen caregivers go through to become registered nurses, who've become, care home managers, who've then become regional managers. So I'm very proud of, I'm a real believer actually in what a couple of the panels said in terms of growing your own. I actually feel that if you can't get the talent from your own organisation, then actually your processes and your support mechanisms for those staff aren't right. And you need to look at yourself and look at how you're leading that organisation, because why can you not get those people to come through? Why can't you attract them? And then why can you not get that talent to come through? We do a lot of, we're very, very committed to training. So Career Force is the national qualification for our sector. And we basically have, in our dementia care, 98% of our caregivers are either enrolled or qualified in training. We're the number one in terms of having commitment to training and having people enrolled. Back in 2007, we developed a thing called Progress Steps, because interestingly, there was no way that as a caregiver you could actually move up the steps unless you just served your time. And I actually didn't want people who served their time. I wanted people who were competent and skilled and could look after the customer. So I went through a very interesting process with the unions, and I have to say they came on board to actually create a career path for the unregulated workforce, as it's called, that actually linked competency to pay, and also had a commitment to training to pay. So if you attended 12 training sessions a year, you would go up to the next step. That's cost me a significant amount of money, but what it has done, it's raised my customer satisfaction from back in 2007, it would have been in the high 60s, to it now currently sits at 89%. And what's happened is every single competitor has actually copied those progress steps. But for the first time, those people were actually got a message from an employer that actually the training was valued and we were prepared to pay for it. So what happened was people turned up in their droves at training. We had 160%, 200% increase in attendance. We have a scholarship program. That's what's helped a lot of caregivers become RNs. And we're the only aged care provider that has a professional development recognition program approved by the Nursing Council. We do lots of coaching, mentoring. We do lots of secondments. I currently have 4 staff in the UK at different levels working over there for periods of 8 weeks to 3 months. So, again, not long secondments, but incredibly valuable for both the UK and for us and for those individuals. And people can usually manage a stint of about 6 weeks away. So when you ask them to move for years, then that's a bit of a problem. We have an annual engagement survey. We have a number of recognition schemes. So we actually do share the profits that we make by... It's like a lotto. So 600 staff got an extra payment of about $600 in February. Holiday of a Lifetime, we have 7 people that we send off on wonderful holidays. We have a scheme called Personal Best that actually recognises all the things that people bring to their role that actually isn't in their job description. For me, this is one of the most important things about diversity, because it is diversity of thought, and it's actually valuing the uniqueness of each individual. And that's what's actually really, really hard to do. But this scheme really does nail it, because what it says, if you happen to be really good at macrame or knitting, or really good at music, and you come and you entertain residents by doing those and bringing those skills to work, we will actually formally recognise you, and we will reward you even though it's outside of your job description. You don't need to do it. Yeah, we also celebrate length of service, which I thought lots of people did until the company a friend of mine worked for said that they weren't allowed to take 2 employees out for lunch who had been there 10 years. Whereas we actually make a big thing of 2 years, 5 years, 10, 15, 20, 25, because having that longevity of experience is incredibly valuable. And it goes on and on and on. So the point I'm making, Employee Health and Wellbeing Programme, EAP, we did positive aging because we do have, so we actually ran a course, or we run a course for our employees so they can think about the aging process for themselves, given that we've got a number that are over 65 and a number that are over 50. And basically, we're very lucky because what we say is that we provide person-centred care. So the care we provide each person is different, and actually that enables the staff member to be different too, and they can be themselves. We do a lot of dressing up, an awful lot of dressing up. So actually, I was dressed up in some Indian gear, lovely, lovely dress that one of my staff members lent me, and actually lent all my children, so I've got 4 children, and my husband was the only one that wasn't dressed up, actually. And we were walking down Queen Street, and we were getting stopped and photographed, because I think they weren't used to seeing, 4 little blonde-haired, blue-eyed things in all these saris. So, but yeah, I tend to dress up a lot. We also do a lot of kind of cooking different foods and using that as a way to celebrate. The thing about it is it working, so I can stand up and say, oh, look, we do all these things, isn't it great? But, what are the results? What we find in our engagement survey, we've got 89% of employees are saying that they feel included. We're scoring well above the high-performing benchmark for New Zealand in terms of employee engagement. We've exceeded the international benchmarks by 11%. We do have turnover, lower than our competitors. And I suppose this is the thing I'm most proud of. We have a net promoter score. I'm not sure how many people here are using net promoter score. But if anybody wants to talk to me about it, it's quite an interesting way, because your net promoter score can be a negative number. Because basically if somebody says they're not satisfied, that's a negative. If somebody says they're only marginally satisfied, there's a negative. You only get a positive if they say they're really satisfied. So it can be quite a stark number. And the banks, for example, would, actually the insurance companies would run a negative net promoter score of about -40 to 50. So to actually have a positive net promoter score is quite significant, and customer satisfaction of 89%. So, the key points I think around diversity is actually diversity it has to link to your business strategy. You need to know what your business strategy is, and you need to know your customers. So I believe everything that we do is in service of our customers, and if you don't know the answer, the customer will know the answer. And that's what we have found really valuable in actually bringing the customer in to the diversity that they need our workforce to have. So really listening to them about what do they want in their service. And that's varied. So for example, we've had one service in South Auckland where the Southeast Asians said, actually we want a wing by ourselves and we want it to be staffed in a particular way. So, we've managed to do that. In Rotorua, we've got a wing that's, dedicated to Maori, and it's, again, staffed in a particular way, decorated in a particular way. But basically, I've made sure that our diversity agenda has been led by our customers. And then as the CEO, I will then lead the diversity agenda, but I will only lead it in service of my customers. And that way I feel very comfortable that the initiatives that we're taking are the right initiatives, and they're not actually, just to make the numbers look good. I suppose, the know your workers, I have emphasised that point, know their issues and be open to trying new ideas. And I suppose this, for me, in my personal journey was, I thought I was really open, but it was like, oh, really? Do we have to do something else? Really? Do they not really like that one? Can we not just stop there with personal best? Why do we have to do this fitness stuff? But, I've come to the acceptance that actually all of these, they feed off each other, and you do need a multifaceted, multi-pronged approach. And also, for me, I'm in a service industry, so I do really need to understand the impact of the customers and their happiness and well-being, and vice versa. The other thing is also actually have fun and celebrate the successes along the way. As I say, not everybody needs to dress up, but I can highly recommend it. And I also think food's a really good idea. But also celebrate those people that have come through, that are diverse, that have been promoted, that are adding to different thinking. A couple of years ago, we had one of our caregivers who became a registered nurse, who became a regional manager. He won the EEO, Walk the Talk award, and that was a very proud moment for us, because basically we had, grown this guy who was a very, very rough diamond into something that, an external body was prepared to say he's one of the best managers in New Zealand. So yeah, it's definitely a journey, and it doesn't stop. So thank you very much for your time. I'm very happy to take some questions.
Grainne, thank you. That's actually about really seriously living the diversity journey within your organisation. Do I have questions?
Oh, hi, it's Julian Hughes. I've got from Z Energy, and I guess I had a comment and a question. So, first comment was, it was interesting what you, in my mind, what you played through was a whole lot of stuff that I wouldn't automatically identify with diversity. So it was, EAP programs and those sorts of things. So I thought that was interesting, and I just wondered if you had a comment on that. Is that something you've grabbed and said, well, that is actually part of our diversity program? Because I'm not sure a lot of other companies would do that. I guess that's the comment I wanted to make. And then the second one was, have the programs you put in place helped to increase diversity, or are they about recognising the diversity that already exists? Because I kind of wasn't clear around that, and I just wondered from the, a lot of companies actually I understand trying to improve diversity, and there sort of seems to be two things happening there.
Yeah, no, I think those are both very good points. I think the first one around the programs, I think you're right. I think other companies maybe haven't identified some of the stuff that they do as part of the diversity agenda. I think for me, the big shift I made, and what I find is there's probably about 7 female CEOs in New Zealand, so there's very few of us. And what I was very conscious as a leader, I didn't want the diversity agenda in Bupa to be all about women. Whilst, of course, my workforce is female. The other thing is, I suppose, I'm working in a healthcare system where I know that when a resident comes to live with me, they don't want to be, I'm Julian, I'm male, I take these medication 3 times a day. They want to be, I'm Julian, I like fast cars, or, I really enjoy curries, or, support the blues. So for me, it was quite easy to say, well, what do my people need to actually succeed and grow? And I think probably you're right. What we've done is we've said, let's take the talent that we've got, let's take the diversity that we've got, and empower that diverse group to be the best they can. So there's an organisational development equation. I kind of think this is quite funny because organisational development and HR, they don't tend to have a lot of numbers very often. But this equation they have, I think, is very relevant, which is basically a person's behaviour is part of their personality and their environment. And I think we as leaders have a responsibility to create the environment that allows the personality to flourish. And you actually need those two things working in tandem. So I think the strategy I took was actually, I've got 4,000 staff, I've got to have talent. I have diversity. If I'm saying they're not talented, then actually I'm not succeeding as a leader, and my team's not succeeding as a leadership team. So actually, what do we do to create the environment that allows as many people as possible to grab opportunities to grow and develop, and celebrate that diversity? And I think then what you've got is you have had people, because for example, the Filipinos that I would have working for me, they're very, very hierarchical. If I come in and I say, this is the way to do it, they'll go, yep, that's the way to do it. I don't want that anymore, so I've had to take them through a program that enables them to actually say, well, actually, Grainne, that's interesting, but, I thought maybe we might do it this way. So again, very tailored, and I'm a great one in believing in being very tailored, because I think if you don't tailor stuff, then you just get generic habba-habba, and you actually don't drive real change, and you actually really don't open doors for people. So that's why, EAP programs actually do, for some people at the right time, really unleash things for them. They might unblock things. They might help them with budgeting problems that are actually stopping them turning up to work. They might get them out of, support them to get out of a relationship that makes them better at work. So, I do think it is, for me, I did deliberately grab all of them, because anything that is releasing the talent of somebody actually should be valued and included.
Other questions?
Sean Maloney from Moran's Geo. I know in the public health system, cultural and religious sensitivities are an ongoing kind of minefield as they influence care, individuality over the mass. Is that something that is a growing influence on your business, and how do you sort of navigate that minefield, both from staff's growing diversity, both ethnically and religious-wise, but also those you care for?
Yeah, I think it's a really challenging area. I suppose, I'm slightly coloured by my background. I came from Northern Ireland, where religion was a big thing, and you had to figure out did you kick with the right foot or the left foot, and so I'm actually, I suppose, respectfully, pushing away some of those boundaries, because I think that you can't have the "thou must" do. At the end of the day, a lot of my customers will come to me, and that's their home, so they need to be allowed to do what they want to do. And as long as that's not disrespectful to other people. So we have staff members who are Muslim, and they wear their headscarves, and I'm very happy to support them to do that. But I'm not quite at the stage of, you're going to stop 5 times a day, whenever people need looked after. And luckily I haven't had to have that conversation. I think it is a really difficult one, and I think basically you're always treading a fine line. And basically, I suppose I've been respectfully kind of pushing any constraints in terms of "thou must do," and I'll keep continuing to do that. I think if you're charming and polite and respectful, it can go a long way, and actually get into a dialogue about what actually do people want. But I think in the public, I think I have more freedom to operate in the private sector, to be honest, than in the public health system, where I have actually lived in the public health system, and the bureaucracy can maybe not be hitting the outcome. So it's probably a wee bit controversial. Sorry about that.
A more positive question, one to leave us on a high. What would be, Grainne, what would be your advice to a chief executive who perhaps didn't have a very diverse organisation and was aware that more diversity might be a good thing, both around, say, their executive table and within their workforce? How would you suggest they go about it?
I think there's a couple of things that I've been in a couple of businesses that weren't very diverse, and I did work in forestry for a period of time. I was a 31-year-old female in Tokoroa. You can imagine how popular that was. And I think it's understanding the barriers and what's actually stopping your organisation being diverse. And actually, I also say go back to your customer, because if your customer is getting an exemplary service, they're likely to be getting that because of diversity of thought. Because ultimately, no customer is happy with the status quo. And actually, you can't have a sustainable business if you continue on with the status quo. So I'd probably say, go back to your customers, find out what they want from you, find out where the gaps are, and then see if those gaps are actually created by not having the skills, competency, and diversity of thought that you need, and then start to bring that in.
Thank you. Any other questions? Look, thank you for a most stimulating review and understanding of your organisation. And I know the most important thing is that, in fact, through the way you operate, you are actually highly successful. So thank you very much. And could everyone please thank Grainne on behalf of...
Thank you. Thank you. No problem.